Okay, sure. So this is Jill Canto. She's our speaker today for this tiny house event. Jill Canto is a single mom who built a tiny house with dreams of creating a permaculture village. In our tour video, which you will see shortly, she's going to share her DIY building experience and her tiny house parking tips. After extensive personal research, Jill created a tiny home communities directory to help others find and create their ideal tiny house village. Search tinyhousevillages.com. She also purchased 14 acres inside of town limits of Cambridge. The lot can legally become a tiny house community. For now, Jill and her daughters are enjoying Maryland farm life with their horses and Landmates family, a family of 5. They help each other by sharing land and resources. Last year, they started a farm stand and sold organically grown produce and eggs. Together, they've created a mini version of Jill's ultimate intentional community dream.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
At this point, I think we're just gonna go straight into the video. I do want to just preface and say this video was recorded, I want to say in early 2018. No, in the summer of 2018, because I remember how hot it was. And there have been a lot of changes made to the house since. So just after the video, I've got a very short 2-minute video showing the changes to the house. And just keep in mind, if you are thinking about going tiny and you don't have the funds to do it right away, you can build to what you can afford at that moment and then make changes later on, because it is so much less expensive to make changes to a tiny house just simply because of the size. And Thunby, I think you're going to roll the video. While Thunby's loading that up, I can just keep talking. The team that came out that recorded my the tour of my house, they're called Tiny House Expedition, and they actually created a couple of documents that are really important that are also on YouTube, not documents, documentaries, called Living Tiny Legally Part 1 and Part 2, and it shows how people approached their counties and their municipalities to legalize tiny houses in their location, and how on a more national level, people approached the International Residential Code and got important changes made there that are now impacting Maryland that make legalizing tiny houses a lot more realistic. So I highly recommend watching those on YouTube.
Hi, my name is Jill. I'm a single mom living in a tiny house in Maryland. It took me 13 months to get the tiny house to this point, and over the build process, I was continuously looking for a parking location, and I was on Craigslist, I was on Facebook, I was reaching out to anybody and everybody, bringing up the word tiny house parking in any conversation that I could think of randomly. I drove around the county, and I was poster signs and grocery stores and just asking people, and somebody recommended the Nextdoor app. And I posted on there that I had a tiny house and I was looking for parking, that I have horses and I have children, and that I needed a place for the horses, and I was hoping that there would be children nearby so that my children could have somebody to play with. And that same day I received a call from somebody who said that she had been researching all week to see if she could have a tiny house on her property. It was on a horse farm, and that she had 3 daughters. So it was a really great match, and I went to meet them the next day, and we knew right away on both sides that it was something that we were going to do. I didn't have a lot of building experience, and I built a tiny house myself, and there's some things that I learned along the way that I would love to share with other people. One was that I hired a carpenter, and then I was their assistant, so that way I could learn the ropes, so that when my funds for a carpenter ran out, then I would have at least some knowledge to move forward. The other thing is that I used, highly recommend this video. This was my Bible. Anytime that I was confused, I referred to this. And I threw a lot of build parties. People were very enthusiastic about the tiny house movement, and I had friends that I didn't know that I had reach out and come to the build parties and help me out, and that was a lot of great fun. I built the Andrew Morrison model, and in his model, he has the kitchen underneath the loft and the living space in the open. And for my purposes, it seemed a better fit to have the kitchen in the open and then have the sitting area under the loft. I thought it would maximize the height differences a little bit better. So I did a long kitchen counter. This is all from IKEA. These are all used cabinets. Along the way, I met this wonderful retired man named Jack, who's a retired cabinet maker, and he built these stairs for me. And eventually I want to put doors or curtains on them to make it a little tidier, but the space and function that comes out of it is really fantastic, and I'm super appreciative to him for that. So when I first moved into the tiny house, I didn't have a dishwasher, and I cook most of my food, and I make a terrible mess every time that I do. So I was spending maybe a half hour a day begrudgingly doing dishes. It was the only dark mark on Living Tiny that I saw, and somebody was kind enough to give me their used dishwasher. It's apartment size, so it fits in there perfectly. So my youngest daughter's loft is up there. It's 5.5 feet, and it fits her really well. She's 7 years old. The same gentleman who made the stairs also made this wonderful door out of scraps for me. This is our bathroom. Those are the goats that live outside. This is the Rinnai water heater. This thing is fantastic. It has never failed me, and it's always kept the water very warm. We built our own compost toilet, and so far it's been working out pretty well. I do not like the sink. I would never recommend anybody get the sink for a tiny house, although I've seen it pretty popular, so maybe people are having different experiences than I am, but the water splashes out because of the size. And for the shower, originally I had corrugated metal throughout here, and I was concerned that water might be getting behind it. So I tore out the corrugated metal, painted the walls with Kills, and as a stopgap right now I have plastic sheeting up, and at some point I'm going to figure out if I'm going to put tile on that or not, or what other options I might pursue. So this is Hydro. It records electricity coming off of the breaker, and this is a wireless one, so it sends the information to a website where I can review how much I've used each day, and I can get a better idea of my electrical usage. And I sent a login to my landmate, and she can track it as well. This was originally going to be the living area, but when we moved in, for some reason I thought that my two daughters would be able to share a loft, and then I quickly changed my mind on that and decided that I would sleep down here while they slept. Well, one slept here and the other one slept in the larger loft. And then I very quickly also put these up to maintain some sort of sense of separation. So these are the typical where you pick them up to get into the loft underneath. If I would do this again, I would just do the pull-out drawers, because it's a lot easier. This is a difficult system to maintain, to easily get items out of. Anchored a TV on a swivel. Oh, and this book, I highly recommend this book. This is great for people that are wanting to start or to join a community that teaches you the skill sets. And what's useful is that if you're local to this area in Virginia, there's an Intentional Communities Conference every year at Twin Oaks. And you can find more information about that at communitiesconference.org, and they teach you a lot of the skill sets that are in this book as well. So I haven't finished the trim. So when I moved into, I've been living in this tiny house for about 2 years, and I thought I could get it to a point where it's livable, and then I could work on it while I moved in. But it turns out I got lazy once I moved in, because I really didn't feel like doing anything else. I've done a few things since then that were utterly vital, but I haven't done any of the trim. I haven't finished the ceiling. So this is the master loft. It's 10 feet 2 inches, and we have a king-size bed in here that fits easily. There are 2 skylights, and there's a skylight above the other loft as well. My ultimate dream is to live in Colorado in a tiny house village. I used to live in Colorado, and it broke my heart to leave, so I've always been looking for a way to get back. Not to say that I don't love my arrangement here, because it is fabulous. I would love to have a permaculture-based intentional community that has a central area that encourages social interactions, where the houses are kind of almost facing each other in a circle. And then there's like a shared common building that can be used with like a large kitchen, a large seating area, maybe a yoga room and gym, library, just whatever common areas that people generally would need that would meet the needs of the people in the community. Any lack thereof of feeling within your tiny house, so I don't have my own library or study. You could have, a workshop and an office space, all those needs met within a community building, and that there'd be great interactions in the community building as well. And something that was definitely permaculture based, where we were growing a lot of our own food and cooking together and sharing labor so that we were reducing a lot of the redundancy and the workload. So I don't like to force any type of lifestyle on people, but I would like to expose them to tiny house living and permaculture-based living, because I think that those are two solutions that, especially when combined, can heal a lot of what ails our society.
So one of the benefits of living in villages, as I'd mentioned, is sharing labor. So one of my passions is growing food, so I grow food and then share it with my landmates. And they love having chicken, so I get free eggs.
So Aaron and I were looking online to see if there was any villages that we could find, because we were going to plan a trip to Colorado and just go check them out. And we went online, and we weren't able to find a central directory where all the information was listed. We found a couple of blog posts here and there where they mentioned a few villages and several websites that listed information about their village, but you had to research each individual one. So we started gathering the information and putting it into a spreadsheet so that we could go over which ones would be a good fit for us to find. And once I had that information gathered, I felt compelled to share it with others. I'm a web developer, so I had the skill set that it wouldn't be too much work for me to share it. Well, that's what I thought. It wouldn't be too much work, but it was a ton of work. So I created a directory and then approached people on Facebook and tiny house people and asked them what would be important for them, important factors for them in finding their village. And so I just got feedback and tweaked things up, and then finally got it launched. And it's still a young site, but I'm excited to where it's going to go. There's a lot of things that I want to add to it in the future that will help villages and people find each other and help new and young villages grow without having to reinvent the wheel. So this is my second year with the garden out here. I had to put the fence up because the goats were my main customer. Because of the website, I'm a lot more behind on it, but what you're looking at right now is actually the compost pile. There's plants beyond it. Got a pretty diverse setup of plants usually. And the building just beyond it is what we lovingly refer to as the cottage. It's a converted carriage house, and the owners, my landmates, are renting it to us for extremely inexpensively. So we use that as like an office space and for play area for kids, and it's air conditioned and just extra storage spillover. And their house is the large building beyond that. It's a family of 2 adults and 3 children, although one of the children is going off to college soon. One of the reasons that I was excited about the website is that I really want to share the idea and possibility to people. I got an email this morning saying that they weren't aware that there were that many villages out there, and that they're a nonprofit and they're going to bring the models that they're seeing on the website to their local government to try to get tiny houses and tiny house villages legal in their area.
Hey guys, Alexis and Christian here with Tiny House Expedition.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And click left or right for more tiny house stories and tours.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that video. And I know that you said that videos were a couple of years ago, so I know that you also have some updates to share with us. So if you'd like to talk about that a little bit, you're on mute at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, I was extreme. Like, my mom lent me the money to start with the house, and I needed to, continue working and to finish funding the house. And so I had a very limited budget with what I could start with. So there was some things on there that that I made changes to. So let me go ahead and oops. So this is a very brief 2-minute video. If you can't see it, let me know, but you should see the new exterior. I've got flat siding on it now, and I put a new roof on it. I took out the skylights because they leaked, and I extended the roof out so that no water could get in when there was sideways rain. And instead of having the bales around it, I now have foam boarding, and that helps keep the insulation on the warmth under there. It keeps the wind from cutting out, so that the floors are warmer and the internal temperature is more normal. And there's a deck. On the inside, I have added a clothes washer, which has been an awesome experience. And on the outside, right by the hammock, I have a clothesline where I hang up on the food. So the clothes. So that serves also as my laundry hamper. When it's full, I just turn it on and clean the clothes. I also have a mini split, which I didn't before. I just had simple wall heating. So this mini split, if you're not familiar, they do heat and cooling, and they're extremely inexpensive to run. So by way of example, my electricity last month was $29. And where I used to live before I went tiny, this time of year, it would have been about $200. And to help circulate the air, I've installed a ceiling fan. You can tell I still haven't finished my ceiling, but I've installed a ceiling fan, and that helps circulate the heat when the mini split's on, or just to keep it cooler in the summer. I took out those front panels, and I took out the side bed, and I put in 2 couches. And this is multifunctional. That couch reclines out and it goes really far back. You can almost lay in it like a bed, and you can watch TV or use that TV as a monitor, which is really nice. That is a foldable table right there. So I can put a triangle wedge behind me, and I can use that as a table to work at as well. And I can pop this up, and we can use that for eating meals, or working, or playing games. The cottage is being redone, and that is going to be turned into a place for Airbnb and for practitioners to come in to do body work, therapy, and those types of modalities. I've gotten my own chickens now, and I haven't quite finished building it, but the coop, I haven't put the finished siding on it to make it pretty, but so I've got like 20 chickens and a goose now, and they free range during the daytime. And we opened up our own farm stand, and I just had to get a horse shot in there. We opened up our own farm stand, so we have these rows. We're behind on it this year because the main person couldn't go that injured his foot. And this is our little farm stand that normally this time of year would have had to have some food up there for sale. But right now, we are just getting planting. Hold on, how do I end that? We're just starting to get planting on it. So we're pretty behind, and we're actually offering. Hold on, let me go ahead and X that out. Okay, we're actually offering if people want to just use the rows. If anybody likes to grow food, we've got space if somebody wants to come out and use it. And because we don't want to see them go to waste, we're probably not going to be able to make use of all of them. We are currently using the roof stout method, which is a permaculture method where, if you're not familiar with it, you put a whole bunch of hay on top of it, and on top of cardboard, and that suppresses weed growth. And it's one method. I'd love to incorporate a whole lot more permaculture here. I don't have the manpower myself, just because I'm committed on a lot of different things. But if anybody is interested in that and would like to come here and get their hands dirty, we have the dirt, and it's really good dirt. It's mixed with horse manure and everything. Composted horse manure, so it's super rich.
If you'd like to drop your email in the chat as well, and then people can reach out
Sure.
They can see it here. But thank you for that video. I mean, it looks gorgeous. I could tell you're sitting in one of the spaces now that you showed.
Yeah. It's info@searchtinyhousevillages.com is my email. I just put it into the chat. Yeah, so it did cost a lot to do the upgrades. Like everything that I've done was about $5,000, and that included some of the labor because I helped with the siding and the roof, but I didn't do it all myself, just because of time crunch. So if I done it all myself, I could have done it for probably like 2,000. So it's a pretty big impact. Like if you're gonna do that on a whole house, that would have been tens of like a 10,000 or so. Yeah, so you guys had some questions for me. Is that what you want to move to?
Sure. Yeah, so our Q&A session, we've got a couple questions lined up, but if you're here, feel free to write any questions in the chat that you want to know. So the first question that we prepared for you was, how do tiny houses help advance sustainability?
So I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, and I know we're already running out of time a little bit. So I'll keep it a little bit more brief, but there's so many vectors that a tiny house can help. The first thing is just the obvious, the initial building supplies. They're less. A person can, if this is the right type of lifestyle for you, a person can easily live in a smaller space and use less building materials. The second thing is if it's on wheels or if it's movable in any way. Some tiny houses are on foundation, but they're on skids, so they can be moved. Let's say that the average person moves like every 4 years. When you move, not only do you get like lots of moving boxes, but you get rid of stuff. And then when you get to the new place, it's got different, dimensions and everything. So you buy more stuff to fill up the space. In a tiny house, you just hook it up to a truck and you move it. So you're getting rid of that waste cycle that's involved with moving. There was a study done on water usage in tiny houses, and they found that the average compared to the average 3-bedroom 2-bath, a tiny house uses 1/6 of the water. So that's an obvious reduction. I already touched on the electrical differences. For that, I spent $29 before, and now I'm it would have been around 200. I have a propane. I spend about $20 on propane every 3 months, and that's how my water is heated. Heating with electricity is the most expensive, one of the most expensive ways to do it. So having a propane for a heating element is really helpful for that. And then they can be set up in a community setting, which would further their sustainability, because when you have a lot of people and you're sharing, like I said before, like if you have a community building, if you just look at one thing, like if you're in a community and instead of each person having their own lawnmower, the community could just have one lawnmower, and that's just a very, very simple example of that. And it's just really like an access versus ownership versus access. Like, do I need to own all the things in my life, or do you need to be able to get to them when I need them? And can I share them with other people? Like, your car sits in your driveway or in your garage for most of the time, or parked at work, so like that's another example of how we can reduce things. In some of the communities that I've visited, these ones didn't use tiny houses. It was more dorm style, but they were able to reduce their carbon footprint by 80% across the board. And so, that was including gas, trash, and they were very meticulous with their notes. So gas, trash, food waste, everything was reduced, electricity, all by 80%. So, there's quite a bit of movement that you can have within a tiny house to reduce it. And that's there's still so much more, but we can move on to the next question just for the interest of time.
Yeah, sure. So the next question is, what advice would you give to people that are interested in living in a tiny house?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I would recommend. It's COVID right now, so it makes it a little bit harder if you want to do it right now. But with the vaccination and everything, it's getting easier. There are tiny house festivals, and at a tiny house festival, there's typically between like 5 and 30, sometimes 100 tiny houses there. And so you can go on tours in them, and I think that's a really good first start. And they also have speakers that give a lot of information out. I go as a speaker talking about communities, and they also have, they typically will have tiny houses, schoolies, which are converted school buses, and other types of tiny houses that are available, so that you can get an idea of when you need nuts, I would try to stay in. There are tiny house hotels out there. If you go to my website, search tinyhousevillages.com, you will see some tiny houses hotels on there. The closest one to us is in Pennsylvania. Are you guys able to see me? I just got a message that my internet's slow.
Yeah, you're back on. You were a little cutting out a little bit, but you're back.
The closest one is in Pennsylvania, just outside of Lancaster, and they are converting to a long-term community, but I think they're still doing rentals through the summer. So I would recommend trying on a few different tiny houses, spend a couple of nights in one or two of them, invite friends over, cook, whatever it is that you normally do in your life. See what that feels like, so that, because when you live tiny, you really want to maximize the space to meet your needs. So you really can customize every inch in there, and you can't know how to do that unless unless you had experience with the different tiny house functionalities and all the different things that you can do. So that would be the next step. There's also one in Delaware that is just a single tiny house that you can rent there. That's on my site as well. I would, if they're not legal where you live, that's going to be a big hurdle. In Maryland, they, like I mentioned earlier, they've adopted the 2018 International Residential Code. They've left it up to the individual municipalities to adopt what's called Appendix Q. Appendix Q makes living in a tiny house on foundation legal. So it depends on the municipality, and you can call your planning and zoning and ask them if they've adopted Appendix Q. If not, you can just continue pestering them and have more people call, and the more that they hear that they're going to realize that there's a need. I did purchase the 14 acres in Cambridge, and it is legal to have a tiny house on foundation or on wheels there, which is very unique. That's not something that is as common in Maryland. But you can go to the search, if you're not tied to Maryland, you can go to Search Tiny House Villages and look for other places you might be interested in living. Like Asheville, North Carolina is a hotbed. California has a lot of tiny house communities. Colorado has a lot of tiny house communities. And so there's definitely a lot out there. And you can always try to reach out to, RV parks and stuff and ask if they accept tiny houses there. The next thing is, I would say, do a search for Maryland Tiny House Coalition. They do meetups like every month, every other month. And it's just a local group of people that are advocates. And it's a really good place to start locally to connect with people that are also on the tiny journey. And there's Tiny House Industry Association. They're another good group to connect with. For $25, you can have a membership, and that helps support them send two very important people around to get legalization. You guys, if you've seen Tiny House Nation, Zach Giffen, the carpenter on it, they send him around, and he's been a great advocate. And another gentleman named Dan Fitzpatrick, who got it legalized single-handedly got it legalized in most of California, and has gone to several states and gotten it legalized in lots of places. He used to be a land developer and a city planner, so he's been on both sides, so he knows how to go in and get it done immediately. It doesn't matter if they're Republican, Democrat, he's got a spiel for all of them, and he knows how to get it done. Yeah, that's where I would start with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
The next question is, can you tell us about the websites that you've created?
Yeah, I mean, I already touched on in the video the Search Tiny House Villages website. Right now, there's 270 communities on there and backyard parking spots. I consider like what I'm doing a backyard parking spot, and it's a miniature community, so like it counts. So that's on there, and I'm currently developing a new site that isn't launched right now. So it's choosetiny.com, and it is going to be the next generation for Search Tiny House Villages. It's going to combine a lot of needs and make it like a one-stop tiny house resource that's going to be empowered from the bottom up. So it's not looking like, oh, how can I make some money off of this? It's looking at what are the needs of the tiny house movement, and how can I empower the people within the movement to make change and to connect and to do good. So I'm really excited about that. It's a website and a companion app.
Yeah, very exciting. So we can move to questions from the audience. So Kurt had a question. What type of water source are you connected to? Have you thought of ways of collecting water to meet your needs?
Yeah, so I'm connected to I just have a hose coming in, a potable hose coming into the house, and I'm partially off grid. I have a compost toilet, and I do gray water. I'm plugged into electricity. I have not considered alternative methods yet, just because my water usage is very low, and that, like the same, I haven't considered solar panel yet because my usage is so low, and there's a cost, there's an initial cost involved with that. I've spoken to the Solar City several years ago, and just because of my limited roof space, I don't qualify for getting their like the free solar panels on there where they can connect it and they can yeah, so there's options there, but again, my usage is so low that it's something that would be really nice to have, but compared to the average house, it wouldn't get as much bang for the buck as environmentally.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a question personally. So you talked about like the fact that you're promoting this communal style living with where people kind of share the like resources. So can you talk about some of the benefits besides just like the waste reduction that come from this kind of style of living?
Yeah, I mean, how much time do we have? Because this is something I can blab on for a long time.
We have 25 minutes, but we have other questions as well.
Okay, I'll start on it and then you can steer me away if I'm going too long, okay? Okay, I mean, just from a mental health aspect, we like loneliness, especially during COVID, but loneliness in general is a huge issue that plagues our society. America was founded on the banner of independence, and that's been great and detrimental at the same time. Where in the more cooperative societies, they have such a village structure that they don't have that kind of hole in them that we feel sometimes with like retail therapy or drugs or alcohol or violence. That because our basic animal needs of being a pack animal aren't being met in the ways that we kind of historically and evolutionarily grew. So there's just that very basic element, which to me is super important. So that's one aspect. Um, there's a community that I mentioned earlier, the one with 80% reduction. They actually have 7 on-site businesses, and they have made it so that when you work there, you can either work in one of the on-site businesses and or work to support the domestic labor there. They work 42 hours a week. And then they have the rest of their time is 100% theirs because they are communally supporting one another. So as a community, somebody is doing all the cooking, somebody's doing all the cleaning, somebody's doing all the grocery shopping, somebody's doing all the personal shopping, somebody's building your house for you, somebody is taking care of you when you're in hospice. All of those things are being met. And when you have a child, you don't have 42 hours for the first year at all, both parents. So that's 1 year maternity and paternity leave. And then you don't immediately pick up those 42 hours when they turn 1. You gradually get it, and when they're 18, you're back to your full 42 hours. And on the flip side, when you hit a certain age, I think it's 50, you start losing hours. So then you kind of gradually go into this retirement style thing. And it's all volunteer economy, so you pick the jobs that you really like. And you can spread it around different things. So, I mean, that's just a simple aspect. As a group, they're able to get like a group to get dental and medical insurance that is like $10 per person per month, which is crazy. Just because they are so, if you're sick or unwell or mentally, physically, whatever, emotionally, then your work hours are adjusted to what you can do. Even that's down to 0. So you have the space to heal, and in a way that like we don't have in mainstream society. And so their health, like on all aspects, mental, physical, emotional, is so much better. So they're able to have such lower insurance rates because of that. Oh God, what else? The kids. Oh, so like being a parent is really hard, even if you have 2 parents. It's so hard, like because of the way that we do it, because we're independent silos. So as a parent, I have to meet all of my kids' needs, except when they go to school, and then the teacher does it. In a community, you have a plethora of people of various ages that this kid can download knowledge from and guidance and learn from. And so, and also there's a range of kids that are in different ages, so the kids can learn to be mentors. They can learn to be mentored. They can learn to follow, they can learn to lead, they can learn to help and support. So raising a kid in a community is so much easier. And the kids are so much more well-rounded. I've never met kids that are just so incredibly like thoughtful and like curious, and especially if they have some sort of community school. that isn't the standard. Okay, you're 8 years old, you have a ton of energy, sit here for 8 hours while I talk at you, you know. So like it's there's so, I mean, I probably talked about that enough, but I could talk about that for a long time because it's amazing what you can do in that type of setting.
Yeah, that's some. It's very similar to like. Have you heard of Arco Santi in Arizona? So I have visited there before, and it's kind of a similar idea. So we have another question in the chat. Are you sometimes affected by weather changes? Like, if so, how?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One, because of the way I have my water hooked up, every once in a while it will freeze. It is fixable. It's just and it's only on the outside. It's not in the house at all. Just outside, where it's coming from into the ground, from the ground into the house. I can fix it. It's not even like a long fix. I just haven't prioritized it because it's so infrequent. But I just need to change how it's connected and change the heat tape that I have on it, and it would be perfectly fine. I have been through high winds. I've never had any issue with the high winds. I don't even have it tied down right now, and I've never had any issues with high winds. I don't have it on the wheels on the ground. I have it on concrete piers right now, and I haven't had any problems with that before. When I put the skylights in wrong, so I did have, with rain, I did get water damage, but that's been fixed. So
Thank you for answering. Do we have any other questions in the chat? Yeah, thank you for coming. All right. Well, before we have everybody head out, we wanted to mention that Jill is looking for students to get involved in helping the tiny house movement by assisting with the website that she's developing. So Jill, can you tell us a little bit more?
yeah, so I mean, it's a really ambitious website, and I've been doing all the work by myself, except for I hired a freelancer to do a small little smidgen of it. It is way too much work for one person, but I'm so passionate about it that I've been putting just putting as much time into it as I can, because I think it's really going to have a huge impact on making living tiny a lot more realistic, and once you are living tiny, have a lot better options. So I'm in need of just about any type of skill set that you can imagine when developing a website. So I need a graphic designer, full stack web developer, marketing, communications, somebody to manage the volunteers, project manager would be awesome. Just anything on that realm. I do have an app. The app's already developed, but somebody that can manage the app. Uh, yeah, just anytime, anything in that realm. I would really love some help. It's WordPress and it's PHP on Nginx. I'm gonna butcher the server name. As I just saw that question pop up from somebody, and I just saw another question a moment ago. Am I worried about natural disasters? Can you clarify what you mean by natural disasters? Because my house is on wheels, so if something really bad was coming, I could just pull it away. So, like, you know how like California has the fires, like tiny houses are a proposed solution for that, because if they know a fire's coming, you can hook up a truck to it and pull it away, and then you're good. You know, if there's a really bad hurricane coming, and like let's say that we knew that this area was just going to get demolished, like Louisiana, I could pull it away as long as I've got like maybe 3 hours notice, you know. So I've got my options there.
Yeah, that's very practical. So do you have to change you said it's not currently on wheels, so how does it get on wheels basically?
So the wheels are still on it. I just don't have the weight on the wheels. I have the weight on the frame. So I put it up on concrete piers so that I'm not on a flat spot either. So that makes it a little bit harder. That's why I one of the main reasons I had to do concrete piers. But I also just didn't want the pressure on the tires in the same spot. I've been here for what, 4.5 years now. So I could take the wheels off, and that would probably be healthier for the tires. But they're covered, so they're not getting sun damage. They can get degraded by the sun.
Gotcha. All right. Well, do you guys have any other questions? Also, Jill dropped her email earlier, so please feel free to email
If you're interested in becoming a volunteer, I'm going to put a different email into that one just so that it's a little bit easier to keep track. That's jill@choosetiny.com. jill@choosetiny.com. And I also have a phone number. It's you can text or call. It's 888-476-8469. The easier way to remember that is 888-GRO tiny. So grow tiny, but not the W. So I couldn't get the W. 888-GRO tiny. And I would love help to make this move forward faster than it is.
Yeah. Well, I think that we're good then. Thank you guys for coming. Feel free to come back at 3 when we're having yoga. Jill, you're also welcome to come to yoga if you have the time. But yeah, this has been our tiny house session. That's all. That's all, folks. I'll share my screen again. I'll stop the recording. Yeah, thank you for coming.